What are advance directives? What is a living will? Are there different types? These are issues you need to think about now because it's not uncommon for people to feel forced into important, life-altering decisions. Find out about that and more in today's edition of Life Matters. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives. As California Commissioner on Aging, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on life, on the culture that emanates from the idea that every life is significant. That's what the right to life is. It's a statement of the government's responsibility to protect the lives of the governed. So the right to life is important, but there's a culture and a war of ideas against that idea. And it's important that you be prepared for that. That's why we have Life Matters as a program to equip you for this very real battle of ideas. And in this battle, you're going to have to fight, first, over those ideas, clarify the ideas that you subscribe to, and understand the opposing ideas. Today's program, we're going to focus on the fact that you're getting older and the fact that you can do things to keep yourself and your loved ones out of nursing homes. It's very important to realize that in just the last 10 years, it's been happening for a while, but easily in the last 10 years, there's been a sea change in medical ethics. And sadly, medical ethics has abandoned its fundamental premise. Here in California, the California Medical Association has taken an officially neutral position on physician-assisted suicide. So what that means is having a doctor kill a patient, well, they're going to be neutral on that. No, I'm sorry. Doctors killing patients is against the very fabric of what it means to be in medicine. And if you're neutral, that would be like the Police Officers Association being neutral on pistol whipping suspects, or neutral on shaking down local businesses for protection. Well, some policemen do it. Some policemen think it's okay. It's not okay. And the fact that there are some physicians who are willing to kill their patients in the name of mercy doesn't make it okay. It makes it extremely dangerous. And yet the medical establishment is gradually now going down that slippery slope. But it's not merely a slope. It's a precipice. And sadly, as you know from my background, I've been in many nursing homes in the state of California and in other states. But California, we have nursing homes. Some are very good. But to be perfectly honest, others are mere warehouses of humanity. And if you are left to your own devices there, you're completely vulnerable to a new order of medical care, and you need to be ready for it. And you need to be ready to protect your loved ones should they find themselves vulnerable to these medical facilities. Today's program is going to be part of an ongoing series that you'll hear from periodically, and if you'd like to subscribe to just that series on nursing homes and caring for the elderly, I suggest you do that. But we want you prepared now. And this is not a program for elderly people. That's right. In a little bit, I'm going to talk about the fact that if you're 25, 30, 40, you need to prepare now. What you do now will determine if you are likely to end up in a nursing home. We'll be joined on today's program by Nancy Valco, RN. She is one of the good ones, one of the good nurses, and as we talk about in other programs, it's often the nurses that end up doing the dirty work for the doctors. And if you haven't heard our program on assisted suicide and what's really happening where it's legalized, you should know that the physician isn't always present. He leaves it to others. He merely writes the prescription. But Nancy is a good friend, and she pursues ethical medicine along the lines of the Hippocratic Oath, which again has been abandoned by many parts of America's medical system. Nancy has worked in critical care, in hospice, in home health, in oncology, dialysis, and many other specialties for over 45 years. You'll find she's very engaging and experienced and very practical on these important issues dealing with life. Now, before we get to Nancy's interview, I'd like to talk about you. Because Life Matters is actually about you and your life. How you focus your life. Will you focus on what really matters? And in life matters. That's right. Our lives and the lives of other individuals are what make up life. And we sometimes get distracted into things, money, or even as we talk about the right to life, into government and policy, and that's very important. As you know, we talk about those policies that impact human lives. That's what the right to life statement is. Our founders saw that vast government can actually end up dismissing the significance of an individual life, and yet it's individual lives that are being governed. And as far as individual lives, well, that's what you've got. So I want to spend a little bit of time right now talking about you, preparing yourself to not end up in a nursing home. You know, in my line of work, I frequently get calls here in California and some from out of state. And Nancy has as well. When you're involved as an advocate for the medically vulnerable, you get calls from people that say, they're trying to kill my grandma at the nursing home. They don't want to take care of her anymore. There's someone else that will pay more and they want to empty her bed. This happens a lot, my friend. It happens a whole lot. And if you're not ready, it can happen to you and your loved ones. I want to start with you, though. You know, on our podcast, this radio show is also presented as a podcast where we go into even greater depth. Our average listener on our podcast is in their late 30s, and that's very gratifying because you need to prepare now. You need to prepare now to understand this battle that's coming at you. You are now on the cusp of a very dangerous cultural situation, a silver tsunami in our nation, the graying of America. We are not having enough children to provide. We are not providing enough resources and understanding for our elderly. We know that Medicare, we know that Social Security are still on the cusp of survival. If you don't see what's coming on the horizon, you're in trouble. So what I want to do right now is focus on you. I want to make sure that you aren't one of those calls, because even though you're in your late 30s or 40s or 50s, time goes quickly. You need to take care of yourself. So before we get to Nancy, I want to take a little bit and I want to talk about what you can do right now. What you can do. Here's an article from the New York Times, and this was published on November 21st of 2018, right just before Thanksgiving. And it says this, that regular exercise may keep your body 30 years younger. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about this study. It's very important for you because what you do right now, if you're sedentary right now, you need to get up and move. It's critically important that you prepare for getting older. And the reason is it's a lot better to get older than the alternative. You're either going to die or you're going to get older. So make sure that you're preparing to get old graciously and healthfully. And we'll talk about that when we come back.
Life Matters continues after this.
Life Film Fest is the creative outreach in Hollywood that's changing Hollywood and the culture. There's many films you've already seen that actually had their start at Life Fest in Hollywood. But more than that, we work with people throughout the industry who want to creatively bring the message of life, creatively impact the culture so that hearts and minds of our fellow citizens understand the depth of what the right to life really is. Be part of Life Fest Film Festival and make a difference.
Go to lifefilmfest.com. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life, on the culture that emanates from that idea that there is a right to life for every human being, that innocent human lives should be protected by the government, that that's its job, that human lives have intrinsic value given by their creator. So the right to life is critical, but there's a culture and a culture war about that idea, and you're in the middle of it. And if you don't understand that, you're going to lose. So we want to prepare you here at Life Matters so that you can be effective in that battle. Before we left, I was talking about what you can do to prepare for getting older, because you are, whether you like it or not. And time can take its toll. There's things you can do, though. And I mentioned an article in the New York Times from November 21st, 2018. Let me read to you. The muscles of older men and women who have exercised for decades are indistinguishable in many ways from those of healthy 25-year-olds, according to a new study of a group of active septuagenarians. And those are people in their 70s. These men and women also had much higher aerobic capacities than most people their age, the study showed, making them biologically about 30 years younger than their chronological ages, the study's authors concluded. Now, the fact is, if you are exercising now in your young years, it's going to help you. That health will carry on. Let me read to you more from this study. The researchers focused on the cardiovascular system and muscles because they believed inevitably that those would decline with age. And the scientists had expected they would see what Dr. Trapp, he's one of the scholars in the study, what he describes as a hierarchical pattern in differences between the groups. The young people, they thought, would possess the most robust muscles and aerobic capacities, with the lifelong exercisers being slightly weaker on both counts, and the older non-exercisers punier still. But that outcome was not precisely what they found. Instead, the muscles of the older exercisers resembled those of the young people, with as many capillaries and enzymes as the youngers, and far more in the muscles of the sedentary elderly. So what you want to do is make sure you're not being sedentary. Whatever you're doing, whatever your age, be exercising now. Push it if you can. And if you need to lose weight, push it, because it's going to help you. Now, I'm not giving you doctor's orders. Make sure you talk to your physician if you're seriously overweight. But you already know you want to keep your health. Our health is something that is extremely valuable. And as we find out later, that's why you don't want to end up being dependent on others just to move around, just to do basic things like feed yourself and go to the bathroom. That's what nursing homes end up being, and it's very, very difficult. We're going to have other programs where we talk about alternatives to nursing homes, and there are many, but the best alternative is to not need one. The very best alternative is to be healthy, even in your older years. Let me finish reading this study. The active elderly group did have lower aerobic capacities than the young people, but their capacities were about 40% higher than those of their inactive peers. In fact, when the researchers compared the active older people's aerobic capacities to those of established data about normal capacities at different ages, they calculated that the aged, active group had the cardiovascular health of people 30 years younger than themselves. Together, these findings about muscular and cardiovascular health in active older people suggest that what we now consider to be normal physical deterioration with aging may not be normal or inevitable, said Dr. Trapp, who was the head of this study. So that's from the New York Times, and that's from November of 2018. But it's really common sense, and I want to remind you that now is the time to prepare to get older. You're getting older. You want to stay out of a situation where you're dependent on others for your very life. Why? Well, if you've been listening to our program, it's because now the medical profession no longer feels an obligation to care for and protect the vulnerable in their care. That's extremely dangerous. We want to keep you out of that situation. We want to prepare you so that if, in case, a loved one is in that situation, you can do something about it. You know what to do. And our ongoing series on staying out of the nursing home and how to protect your life and that of others will equip you for this battle ahead. When we come back, we're going to hear from Nancy Valco, a good Hippocratic nurse who believes in protecting human lives and that the true role of medicine is to care for and comfort, but never kill a patient. So we'll hear from Nancy as she talks about what you can do for others as well as yourself. I'd like you to remember what you do for yourself now, regardless of your age, will have a dramatic impact on your future. We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to Life Matters.
You know, you're pretty amazing. The reason I can say that is America's founders said that about you. That's right. They said that every human being is created by a creator and given rights by that creator. Those rights are not given by the government. It's the government's job to protect those rights. And the very first and most important is the right to be alive, the right to life. If you want to be involved in the national effort, go to nrlc.org.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Well, welcome back to Life Matters, your program on life, culture, and the very real battle of ideas. I'd like to take a moment and introduce our guest today. Nancy Valco has been working in critical care nursing as a hospice nurse in home health nursing, in oncology, and dialysis and various other specialties for 45 years.
Very important issue. Listen in.
I think one of the most important things as we get older and as our loved ones get older is understanding the need to, if at all possible, to stay out of a long-term care situation or a long-term care facility like a nursing home. So what are some good ways to do that, Nancy?
Well, taking your medicine, getting your checkups, getting all your vaccinations, and the kinds of things like be immunized against shingles and take your shingle shot, your flu shot, things like that help. There's a lot of stuff people can do to keep healthy, keep your weight down, know your blood pressure. And this is what a lot of people are doing anyway, but it's especially important as we get older. Personally, since I'm going to be turning 70 next year, I've taken up yoga, which is really good for balance because so many people fall past the age of 65. And that's very often fatal in some cases.
Yes, at the very least, it will send you to the care home, and that's when things can start to go downhill. On another program, I speak at length about exercise, the different types of exercise according to your age group, and being willing to be serious about exercise because that really helps us stay young. That's how kids run around a lot. And there's actually a vitality that comes from the exercise. So that's very important too. And of course, you want to do exercise after consulting with your doctor. But it is good to do some serious exercise. Don't overdo it, but being serious about it. And yoga is perfect because of the nature of the muscles. It makes the muscles work without straining the body and the joints in particular.
I think it's great. And I'm a case study in what you can do. I got my act together when I was 49 years old and about 250 pounds. I felt terrible. I was working all these night shifts. And now I'm healthy and people say you look like you're maybe 50. And it took a while. I did a little bit at a time. I tell people don't try to do too much at one time. But I took off way over 100 pounds. I do resistance cardio. I schedule it every day. Even a little bit here and there is a huge help. One thing my husband and I are talking about is that we had some friends that are building a house and they made sure they had all sorts of great things in it, like it's all on one floor. They have grab bars in the bathroom. When I did home health, I would tell people those little rugs that you have that can slip are very dangerous. I would take a walk through their house and look at anything that might be improved, particularly toileting, getting up and down, but staying flexible and keeping your mind and your body active. And I had a total transformation. People who've seen pictures of me from 20 years ago do not think it's the same person. So it is possible even when you're older.
That's exactly right. And I'm a big fan of that, of exercise, because of the youthfulness that it can bring back. We won't go into great depth here, but I think it's important for every one of us. We live inside our body, and our bodies are made of cells. And if your cells are not respirating properly, if your cells aren't getting oxygen, so it isn't just that you need oxygen. Literally every cell in your body needs oxygen. And your blood flow is what gets it there. If you're not moving your body, if you're not getting that blood pumping, then your cells themselves will begin to suffer. There's a whole theory of cancer. I believe it's really proven, but it goes back to the 1940s. Dr. Otto von Warburg, who won the Nobel Prize for sussing out the real source of cancers. And it has to do with cellular respiration. Remember this, your cells are working. Every organ you have is working for you. Every single organ is working, and it's doing it for you. But your organ is a collection of cells with a common purpose. And if they are not getting their oxygen, and if you think of it, they're working, and without sounding crude, they're also, if you will, pooping. Your cells have to get rid, they have to slough off the stuff they're consuming. And that's why blood flow, hydration, drinking enough water, and it isn't just when you're older. We'll talk in another program. And Nancy, you and I have spoken at length about the need for food and water, particularly when we're older and under someone else's care. But even when you're caring for yourself, if you do not fully hydrate your body, and that doesn't mean sipping drinks, having a coffee, or hydrating your cells is the purpose. And we have a different way in our culture of consuming fluids than we do in nature. If you look at a horse will separate the eating of its food from the drinking of its water. These are two very different functions. And you need to allow your system to get the water into your system and then to go through your digestive tract, because it needs to be absorbed into your body and not merely pass through your body. So hydration when you're younger is very, very important. It'll help you stay young. And I have to agree, Nancy, I think you look very vibrant, and that exercise is absolutely essential if you want to stay young, no matter what your age.
And another thing that I've written on before is know your medications, why you're on them. Many times older people take an enormous amount of medications from different doctors. It's better now that things are on computer and they can pick up the interactions. But what happened to my stepmother was a real case in point. She survived cancer and then started going downhill, and nobody could figure out why until her ophthalmologist saw what she was taking. He switched to a new eye drop that happened to have a thing called a beta blocker in it. She was already taking beta blockers, and she wound up with an overdose. Once they changed her eye drops, she's back to normal and just vibrant as anything. Medication is really important. When I worked in home health, many times I'd have to send people back to the hospital because of medication problems. Too much, too little, not knowing what interacted. Heart drugs with things like grapefruit juice don't work. In fact, I would tell doctors about it in the old days, and they hadn't heard of it. I keep up with everything, and I do check for interactions. But that's another thing. Know what you're taking. And I tell people, if you're on a bunch of medications, at least once a year, when you see your doctor, ask if there's anything that can be stopped. It's really good to have all of those reviewed.
Well, since you're on that, tell us a little bit about the grapefruit juice interaction, because many people do have heart issues and are taking heart medication.
And they have no idea that this can really blunt the whole effect or make it harder, make it actually potentiated. Blood thinners. I have a friend that I help with, and she's taking blood thinners, and her family, when she had some arthritis pain, wanted to give her ibuprofen. I go, no, you can't take that with a blood thinner, only Tylenol. Those other things can potentiate the effect. And I've taken care of people in the hospital who've had bleeding problems, and they could bleed to death.
Yes.
So these things are really important. And people go, well, I skipped a dose here or there. Even doctors have skipped doses. They've done studies on that, and doctors sometimes forget to take their own medication. But the medication is really important, and sometimes an adjustment in medication makes a tremendous difference.
Is there a website or a particular place you recommend people go regarding the drug interaction?
I personally like drugs.com. And I think most of the time they have things for professionals and for lay people. But there's ways to do it to see if there's interactions. It'll give you interactions, what the side effects are. You can ask your doctor too, but it could be a long list of things. But it's really interesting. Find out what you're taking and why. Many times, if you've been to another doctor, he'll order something that would have interfered with what your primary doctor has already ordered. We see that a lot. And people don't realize, they just trust everybody. And I always go, trust but verify. And like my friend who is elderly, she's 96, I check her medications, I see if they're different. I picked up a problem one time when her blood pressure was a little bit low and her daughter had filled it wrong.
So quick overview then on this and staying out of a long-term care situation. You want to get exercise. You want to watch the type of exercise. You want to eat properly. And of course, you want to stay hydrated. You want to drink fluids properly. I personally prefer drinking in the morning, first thing in the morning, because you dehydrate overnight. And so It takes your body adjusting, but I actually will drink up to a quart of water, good old pure water in the morning, and your body then gets used to it and it absorbs it. And yes, you'll have to urinate later, but your body absorbs it. It also helps move along bowel movements, which is something you really need.
My grandmother would always ask us when we were kids, are you having good bowel movements? We go, oh, Grandma, now we know how smart she was.
That's really true. It really is true. Your body has to keep moving. So exercise too. And again, we have other programs on exercise appropriate to your age and current condition. But as Nancy pointed out, maybe your current condition needs you. You got to lose that weight. So don't just exercise gently if you have to lose weight. Change your diet, and then look at an exercise that you can get excited about and that you can pursue and you're willing to pursue. That's the best way to do it. That's how your life will change. And any other tips in summation, Nancy?
There's a lot of good programs around, and a lot of them, particularly for people over 65, are lower priced. Your YMCA, they have all sorts of programs. Finding things that are in your area. Every state has different rules and different things. Home care, different things to help you vote, to help you find what you need, if you need a ride or things like that. Many times people feel like, well, I guess it's my family and I don't want to ask them. And there actually is a lot of other things. Everybody wants to remain as independent as possible, as long as possible, but don't take chances. And the ARP has a lot of stuff going on, and the YMCAs are a wonderful, low-cost way to stay healthy.
And I think just normal life, we're really recording this not just for those who are retired, but if you're not retired, someday you're going to get old. And so this isn't just for seniors listening, this is for their kids, and it's because you're going to be a senior. And a lot of the things that you do normally, you want to keep doing. Stay active with other people, stay involved with groups, follow your interests. I'm going to tell a tale on you, Nancy. I understand tonight you're going to go to an Arlo Guthrie concert.
Absolutely. We're so excited. And it is important to be out with friends and to keep your brain active. And nowadays we have so many ways to do that, like computers and whatever, to keep up on things. But people need to be social. And they found that the healthiest people are those that have a lot of contacts and a lot of pleasant contacts, friends, family, whatever. That's huge.
That's right. And you know what? A lot of times all of us can get that way. We get older, we have set ideas. But always be friendly with new people and the people interaction. There's an old bumper sticker I saw, I thought was a good one. And it says, more wag, less bark.
I love that. Well, I'll tell you, what's been wonderful for me, particularly being older, is grandchildren. Oh my gosh, that is like the greatest gift ever. My mother told me, she said, skip motherhood, go straight to grandma. That's the best place. And that is important. And it's good to know people. We have friends from very young to very much older than us, and we just love it. Everybody's got a different opinion. They've got wisdom. They've got their experiences. And so we try to keep up with everything.
That's the way to be. You'll have a longer life and a happier life. Well, thanks, Nancy, very much. We hope to have you back soon.
Thank you, Brian.
Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council.